The Invisible Man is a film from James Whale, a horror icon who we've covered once on the podcast. It stars the legendary Claude Rains, one of our favourite and most underrated actors that we've covered on the podcast. And it is arguably the best of the Universal monster movies. We're going to talk about that today, about the film, about its legacy, and about how absolutely insane it is. And all that and more on the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Golden Hour Film Podcast. And yes, it is The Invisible Man, a favourite of mine, and it's the only one that my co-host, not guest host, Shane Mulvaney has also seen out of the Universal Monster movies prior to Universal Monster Month. Shane, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very good. All healed up from my dose last week, so yeah, I'm on the mend. How are you?
Nice. Yeah, good. I got both of these in literally today. I've had such a jammed week. As well with the tier list video, I just spoiled what it is. Well, that's an incentive for me to make it now. I haven't had time to watch enough movies for me to finish that. I'm at 27 now. I have 3 more to go. I have 1 downloaded on Sky, and then I need to watch 2 more, and then I finally have the 30, and I'm happy there. And then I'll make the tier list video, but I don't want to make it until I've seen enough classic horror movies. That's what I'm doing, is a classic horror movie tier list video. Hopefully that is out before this, but there's just not enough hours in the day. I've been binge watching the Halloween series because those movies are all less than an hour and a half, so they're pretty easy to get in. But anything over 2 hours, I just can't get in at the minute. Don't have time. What about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm just chipping along with Dexter, which is probably it's we're in Halloween month, so it's an appropriate kind of series to be watching at the moment because it's all about obviously a serial killer. Yeah, so that's kind of slowly but surely making my way through that. Other than that, I do have The Invisible Man, who did a better episode dropping this week, in which I will attempt to dissect and solve the question as to whether which of the Invisible Men movies is better, the 1933 version or the 2020 version, starring Elizabeth Moss, obviously. So yeah, check that out as well. Yeah, very, very good film as well. Very different, completely different films in terms of the actual what's in the film, text, it's
and the themes as well.
Themes as well. Yeah, textually they're not the same in any way, apart from the fact they each have an invisible man, but that's literally it. But that also does mean there's quite a lot I can get into. Yeah, and then obviously a lot of differences, certain similarities, but a lot of differences that I can get into, so it should be a good one. And if and when we drop that episode, when we drop that episode, get into the comments and let us know which one you think is better as well, because it's probably going to polarize people. I think there are certain people that'll fall into certain camps, so that's always good.
All of them have managed to polarize so far, except for the psycho one, except for, as I said, the people who just called me a fucking idiot for asking the question. It was rhetorical anyway. But yeah, as well, on that note, whenever the tier list video does come out, I just need to get those last 3 in. Feel free to let me know what films that I left out that I should have included. The only reason, I'll get into the rules that I kind of came up for myself when I actually make the video, but basically I limited it to 30 because it's a nice round number, and that's about it. I've more criteria that I kind of made when I was making the list. I tried to make it as broad, both thematically, when they were released, and how good the actual films are as I could, so that it's not just all classics, Had to get some of the bad ones in there as well. But it's going to be a fun one, and I'm sure people are going to kill me for not including insert your favorite movie here as a horror classic, So that'll be fun. But yeah, just keep commenting. The comments are always appreciated. So Invisible Man, you've seen it before. Tell us a bit about The Invisible Man.
Well, it's based on a novel from H.G. Wells from the late 1800s. So yeah, it's quite old at this stage, but obviously at the time that they adapted this book, it wasn't that old at all. And obviously Universal decided that it'd be a good a good novel to adapt when it came to adapting their Universal monster movies and kind of trying to fit it in this. So we covered Dracula, we covered Frankenstein, and obviously this is the next film in that kind of
Yeah,
that little run. It
yeah,
does feature an absolutely incredible, wild, super camp performance from Claude Rains,
it's
who
class.
as anyone who's seen our episode on Notorious will know, he's a favourite of both of ours. He's such a great
Yeah,
actor.
big time. Love him.
And this is
Yeah.
like one of his earliest, one of his earlier really big films. Like he would go on to do Casablanca, he'd go on to do Notorious, Lawrence of Arabia, but this is like one of his first breakout kind of leading roles, and he
Mm-hmm.
absolutely eats the scenery up. It's a scenery chewing role. He's so camp. It's so brilliant. Um, yeah, as far as actually the film itself, yeah, we might as well get into a spoiler-free review. I think now at this stage,
Yeah.
yeah, we both absolutely loved it. I know I did, but I know from Harry's letterboxd he can talk about his actual feelings on the film. But we both absolutely love it. In my opinion, it is certainly of the Universal monster movies I've seen, it is my favorite, and I think it is the best as well. So yeah, it's a wild trip of a film, and I really love it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I've seen it a few times. My one gripe, which isn't really a spoiler, is and I know this is a common consensus, and she does this in pretty much every movie
Oh
she's
yeah,
in.
yeah. I know
But
you can. Yeah,
Una screaming equals acting O'Connor is one of the most insufferable actresses on screen
yeah.
I've ever seen. She's been in maybe 5 or 6 movies I've seen, and every time it's go away heat. It's not
Apparently,
it. Apparently, James Whale thought she was like the funniest
yeah,
person on earth,
he
and like they
absolutely
would like,
loved her, and
yeah,
that's why he cast her in Bride of Frankenstein. But yeah, like
yeah. It feels like a personal attack every time she manages. It's worse. She's screechier in this, but she's way more clearly forced into scenes in
yeah,
Bride of Frankenstein. We'll get into that in that episode, but
I agree
in
with that.
this
Yeah,
one, I'll be honest. I gave the film a certain score the last time I watched it, and yeah, I couldn't help. I absolutely adore this film, and I'll get into my score at the end. I did drop it a half a star, and it is entirely because of her performance. It's like it's unwatchable. She is unwatchable. She just screams as loud as she can in every scene she's in, and somehow for some reason James Whale thought it was a good idea to just put her in most scenes. So most scenes feature her screaming instead of acting. Besides that, the film is an absolute masterpiece. I love it so much. There's so many little bits of genius in there. It goes so dark, it goes so funny, it goes so
it's
weird. Like it goes in so many different directions. It's an insane movie and it's class. I love it. And the effects are amazing. I just love them so much, especially for their time. Like Claude Rains to achieve the invisible effect, basically just wore like a full black suit made out of cloth and then or velvet, sorry,
velvet, yeah,
velvet, and
velvet.
then he was shot in front of a velvet black background, and so then they could just cut that out then. But yeah, the effects. There's so many effects in here that I love. There's one where he just lights a cigarette and starts smoking, and he's invisible. Is great. There's so many effects I just love in this movie. It's if you love cinema, you'll love this film because there's so many things in this film that are just everything that I love about these movies.
It is also socially responsible for as kind of dark and as absolutely hilarious as it can be at times as well. It's also socially and politically conscious because Dr. Jack Griffin, who was obviously played by Claude Rains, he has a couple of monologues in this which are pretty much taken, like it came out in the 1930s obviously, and
Yeah.
I'm spoiler alert, I've already recorded the Invisible Man comparison video, and I do mention that in this. But obviously, the 1930s in Europe is a time of quite vast social upheaval and unrest and kind of all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So they would take kind of speeches and monologues and whatever diatribes from certain political figures across Europe and try and replicate them in the figure of Dr. Jack Griffin. So where he talks about obviously murdering people and going on a killing rampage and stuff. Yeah, it's quite like obviously it's trying to rip from the headlines, so to speak, from those in those instances. So from that point of view, even though it is obviously quite camp, quite fun, quite dark, quite funny, it is also kind of trying to talk about this stuff as well for the time period.
Yeah, so they were kind of planning on making this after the success of Dracula, but instead they decided to go with Frankenstein. And whilst making Frankenstein, Carl Laemmle Jr., the son of Carl Laemmle, who was a co-founder and owner of Universal, Laemmle Jr., or just Junior as everybody called him back then, managed to get them to acquire the rights to the Invisible Man for $10,000. For a guy who was like lauded as being terrible with money and putting way too much money into films, that is a absolute masterstroke to get the rights for this for 10K. That is insane. The budget of the film was about 300K because of the special effects, which were like groundbreaking at the time. And to be honest, they still hold up in like in their own fun way. I love the effects so much in this. And yeah, it was also originally meant to be a Boris Karloff film. And James Whale was originally on, and then James Whale decided he was making The Old Dark House, and he decided, you know what, I don't want the stigma of being the horror guy, so he walked away from this with Karloff still attached to it. Him and Karloff made The Old Dark House, which was a big success, and then both Karloff and James Whale would go on and make films that made no money at all, which brought Karloff's star level down for a little while, and he was then taken away from the Invisible Man. But it also then made James Whale realize that he's in his bag when he's making horror movies. So he was like, right, no, I'll go back to the Invisible Man, and I'll go back to making that horror movie. He then left again because this film was written like 5 different times with 5 different scripts. There's like one version of this that has an invisible octopus. There's a version of this where there's like Russian spies. Like there's so many different versions of this movie that existed. And James Whale was like, do you know what, lads? Fuck this. I'm out of here. But then eventually, the guy who did write it, Mr. Sheriff, his script was good enough that it convinced James Whale to come back. And James Whale came back, and the rest is history. We have The Invisible Man, and I reckon we get on into it.
Yeah, 100%.
So, a masked man is walking through the snow outside of an inn with a pub inside in a town called Ipping. Very English. This is set in England, by the way. And he shows up and he says that he wants a room, specifically a room with a private living room, and the maid who kind of runs the place, Miss Hall, Jenny Hall, played by Una Screaming Equals Acting O'Connor, said, oh, but we don't normally have rooms at this time of year. And he was like, well, I have a lot of cash. And they're like, all right, okay, we'll do you up a room. So they do him up a room, and he goes up to it after Jenny and this other girl who works there kind of do it up, and he's kind of rude to her. She asks to take his jacket and she'll get it dry, and he's like, no, stay away from me, I'm not taking my jacket off. He is covered. We see slowly but surely that he is actually covered head to toe in what looks like bandages, but you can't really tell at first because he's got a big hat and a trench coat on and these big thick snow goggles. But it's still a interesting enough look that the lads down in the pub in the inn downstairs are all conspiracy theorizing as to who he is. They kind of land on the theory that he's just escaped from prison, and the bandages on his face are because he hit his head on the wall when he was escaping the prison. I love that they just like all come to that consensus together. It's pretty funny. And by the way, the humor in this, other than Una Screaming Equals Acting O'Connor, is genuinely good. Like,
really funny.
Claude Rains regularly just breaks out into song, and it's so fucking funny because it's always the most inappropriate. It's just like a childhood nursery rhyme whilst he's like on a mass murder spree or something. It's gas, but it is a genuinely very funny movie. And yeah, so Jenny brings him up his supper, and he's like, "Here, woman, stop interrupting me." And he's like, can I just have some peace and quiet? And she's like, yep, no problem. You can have peace and quiet. And she goes back downstairs, and the other girl who helped her set up the room is like, oh, I forgot to give him mustard. So Jenny just storms back up there with her mustard. And yeah, first of many times where she walks in and he closes the door and slams it in her face. He's like, I told you to leave me alone. And she just starts screaming as loud and as screechily as she can.
Yeah, it's ear piercing. Like, it's once is fair enough, but I mean, it goes on and on and on.
Every single scene.
Yeah, it's way overplayed. But yeah, when she leaves, we can see that his face it seems to be like transparent where it's not bandaged, so it's a bit odd. We don't fully see it at this stage, but yeah, it's obviously something that she saw and she was a bit freaked out by, and obviously it's a bit strange for the audience as well. And then we cut to Dr. Cranley and Flora. So Flora's Jack's girlfriend, and Dr. Cranley is her father.
And one of them has been on the podcast before, of course. Dr. Cranley was?
Henry Travers. He was in... It was a Hitchcock film, wasn't it?
It was. He was the father in Shadow of a Doubt.
No, I was going to say, yeah, Suspicion. I don't know why.
Yeah, no, he's the father in Shadow of a Doubt. And
Yes.
the woman who plays Flora is the old lady at the end of Titanic.
Oh, yeah, I knew that, yeah. Yeah, I knew that, yeah.
Yeah.
Gloria
Flora
Stewart.
in this film.
Yeah. Gloria
Yeah.
Stewart, yeah. She obviously Oscar nominated for Titanic, but yeah, she's discussing Jack with her father, Dr. Cranley, and he says, look, he's going to come back. He's just obviously off, and he's whatever he's going through, he needs to sort some stuff out. Arthur says to her that he's been meddling things that should be left alone, so he seems to know a bit more than he's letting on at this stage. And then Arthur says, again, there seems to be a bit of a theme in these Universal monster movies where best friends declare their undying love for their best friends.
It was just the 30s.
Yeah, maybe it's just the 20s.
Yeah.
But
Happened
much
to
like,
Mr. and Mrs. Smith as well, remember?
that is true. So
Early 40s, I know, but...
Much like last week, Flora swiftly rebuffs his advances.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that didn't go down too well. And then we cut back to Jack, who's in his room experimenting, and he says he needs to find a way back home because we don't really know at this stage why, but yeah, he's kind of ranting at this stage.
It might be worth noting, I could be wrong here, but obviously this film was pre-code, so this is why it got away with like mass murder and drugs and smoking and all that. But I wonder if like all these films that are like hinting towards cheating on people and stuff is also like a real pre-code thing. And the reason we didn't see it then for a while is because of the censorship code in America.
That's 100%.
I'd say that might be why these early 30s films that we're seeing have like the theme of cheating, and then other films from the 30s, the late 30s, say don't necessarily have them nearly as much. It must have just been a thing early 30s pre-code.
The code was very kind of restrictive as to like,
yeah,
they wanted to give off this view of like a perfect family dynamic, and yeah, anything that kind of strayed away from that in any way was like swiftly kind of slapped down, just like Flora slapped Arthur down in this. So yeah, like the house code was obviously quite restrictive in those ways. But yeah, we cut back to Jack, and as I said, he's ranting and raving, and when the woman then comes into his room again, he demands she leaves, and she shrieks, Mrs. Hall, she shrieks and says, oh, he's not staying another day, you need to kick him out, she says to her husband. And he's obviously he's quite put upon it. It would seem she rules the roost in this pub.
Yeah.
So he goes upstairs, and tail in between his legs, he goes up and he tries to get Dr. Griffin to pay and then leave. And Jack tells him, look, I've had a serious accident, please let me stay. I can pay you as soon as I kind of get this whole thing sorted. But he refuses, Dr. Hall, so Jack then just flips and he gets really angry, and he throws Mr. Hall downstairs.
Yeah. Literally flies down the flight of stairs, and when he gets to the bottom of the flight of stairs as well, another pre-code thing, like his head's like busted open, like he is bleeding.
And obviously this sets off a whole commotion downstairs. All the customers,
because Una O'Connor's character sees him on the floor at the bottom of the stairs. So what does she do?
You'll never guess what she does now.
She shrieks as loud as she can.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then one of my favorite side characters in this film. I don't have his name down here. I just have him down as A. What's all this?
The policeman.
He's brilliant. Yeah. He's in Bride of Frankenstein as well, and he has a similar-ish role.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does the typical like thick English. What's all this? And they're all kind of surrounding him, and he's like totally oblivious, and they're like, oh. There's a man, and he's just thrown Mr. Hall down the stairs. Go and kick him out or whatever. And he's like, all right, okay, come on then. So he gathers all the lads together, tells all the women to stay downstairs, 1930s, and him and the lads all go upstairs, and they get into Jack Griffin's room. I don't actually know if we've named him yet.
No,
Mr. Griffin's
Jack.
room. Yeah, and they get into his room, and again, straight away. What does he say when he walks into the room? He just goes, what's all this again? It's great. Like, he uses the line twice. It's brilliant. And that's proper police work. And yeah, Griffin is basically like, "Here, Ollie is stay away from me, please. I just want some peace and quiet, man." Like, the poor guy couldn't have picked a worse woman's inn to stay in than Jenny Hall's if he wanted peace and quiet. Like, literally, there's probably no inn in the world worse to go to for peace and quiet than hers, I would imagine.
She's very, very annoying when it comes to not just the shrieking, really, but it's
yeah,
it's,
her
it's
line delivery.
Yeah.
I think she's more irritating in Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah,
but I think her shrieking is so much more worse in this one.
Bride of Frankenstein, she's just shoehorned in so many scenes, and we'll talk about
every scene
next week.
And there's no need for her to be in the scenes.
No. So yeah, Jack then, once he realises the lads aren't going to play ball with him and let him kind of go about his business quietly, he begins to unravel the bandages on his face, and he reveals that it's completely invisible. Yeah, you can't see anything, and he starts to laugh and cackle maniacally. This is so great, Claude Rains. This is
it's brilliant. And again, like, you want to talk about two actors tearing up the scene together, because then what's all this? His line delivery is just so fucking perfect. Again, he just goes, "He's invisible. That's the problem with him." It's like it's so perfect the way he delivers the line. It's so over the top and everything, but like in a good way.
Yeah,
he's such a he's such a caricature of like constables back then. Yeah. He is the epitome of what like you think of when you think of like a 1930s British police officer.
And there he goes.
And then they all try and get him.
And he goes, "If he removes all them bandages, we'll never catch him in 1,000 years." It's so
he's
good.
Brilliant.
I mean,
he
is
so
right.
Funny.
He is right.
Yeah, no, because he does remove those bandages, and he starts. It's so funny because, like, again, I've already said it once, but like, he does go on like these mass murdering sprees, but he also then just goes on these sprees where he's just playing harmless pranks on people.
Yeah,
it's so
now.
Yeah, now we find out like that he has kind of been driven to insanity. So you could argue that is the reason why he's so hard to predict, but we don't know this at this point in the film. But yeah, they try and get him. They fail. Awas all this gets choked, but doesn't die. Thankfully, I need him in more scenes. And he throws another fella down to the floor, and he escapes the inn. And then we just get a pretty funny few skits of Claude Rains singing songs whilst like he steals one guy's bike, and he takes one guy's hat, and it's so funny to me that the guy whose hat he takes becomes a prominent character throughout the film. Like he's in like multiple important scenes, just this random old man whose hat got stolen. James Whale is a class director in that like he balances humor and humanity and the dark stuff and the camp stuff. He balances all of it so well. But yeah, this is just like a bit of lighthearted humor from The Invisible Man, where he's just playing these like literal harmless pranks on people. But
at this point, it
kind of sends the whole village into a frenzy.
He doesn't do the dastardly, really obviously horrible stuff too early because he wants you to like identify with Jack first. And like if you were invisible, like everyone would probably just play some harmless pranks. I know.
Yeah.
So
to begin with,
it's trying to get the audience on board before obviously then we delve into the darker stuff. Speaking of which, we cut back to Dr. Cranley and Arthur, and they're obviously still discussing Jack. And Cranley says that he's found a list of chemicals that Jack was kind of experimenting with, including monocaine, which he says was a flower from India that draws colour from everything that it touches and sends the people who use it raving mad. So that's convenient.
But he said in most textbooks it just says that it like bleaches things. But it was in this one individual thing that he had read that it says like in small print, it also sends you raving mad.
And
So
Cranley swears Arthur to secrecy, and they say, look, we're going to have to go and tell the police that Jack has disappeared because, like it's been a few days, if not a few weeks, probably a few weeks at this point, and obviously they're getting worried about him. So then we cut to Kemp sitting in the study, Arthur sitting in the study, when Jack secretly enters. So obviously Jack's out and about, and he has decided to go and visit his old pal Arthur. Because on the radio we can hear a story about an invisible man in this small town, Ibbing. And yeah, Arthur's obviously his ears prick up with interest because it's Jack, but he doesn't know Jack is there. Obviously, once Jack reveals
Yeah.
himself, and it's a great kind of scene where he just kind of sees a chair moving, even though obviously there's no one there, and it kind of freaks him out as it would. Jack just demands Kemp sit down at this point and starts to call Kemp a coward. Starts to demand Kemp give him bandages because he says, "Look, it's obviously better for you if you can actually see me, so give me some bandages so that you can actually physically locate where I am." So he goes and gets bandages, glasses, pajamas, and gloves, so that Arthur can finally kind of see kind of have an approximation of who he's talking to. He obviously can't see Jack.
Yeah, and James, I feel like like does a really good job of creating a bit of tension that like because he's obviously invisible in these scenes, like totally invisible. We actually don't know if he's in the room with Kemp or not. So Kemp goes down the stairs, and we know the Invisible Man's there because he goes, I wouldn't go using that door if I were you because uh, I, you won't be able to see me coming after you, and I'll catch you in no time." But then Kemp goes into another room to get some supplies, and he reaches for the phone and he picks up the phone, and we don't hear the Invisible Man, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's also like not in the room.
Not there.
So
Yeah.
he just out of fear he puts the phone back down. So it's just very interesting how well managed to handle that. I thought he did a brilliant job there. I think he does a brilliant job throughout the whole film. He's so class.
He's so good. Honestly, like he's a perfect casting, really. Then we cut to the police captain who says that the whole Invisible Man thing is a hoax. He doesn't believe any of the villagers who have obviously told him the story
Yeah.
of what they've seen.
And the radio thing as well was saying that like everybody in the village has contracted a virus, which has led them to believe that they have all seen an Invisible Man. Like that's currently the news on the radio, is that this one village have just all lost their shit. Nah, they're all crazy. Just stay away from there in case you catch the Invisible Man virus. Yeah, there's a
Jack.
very different radio announcement later on in the film.
Yeah, the way they use like radio announcements throughout the film, yeah, it's so smart because it's used as kind of misinformation at times, and it's used to give information at other times. It's so clever. But yeah, we cut back to Jack and Arthur, and Jack says 5 years ago he began in secret to experiment, and he says 1,000 experiments, 1,000 failures, until finally success. He says, and he says he meant to go back just as he left, but he had to teach him a lesson when he wouldn't leave him in secret. He's obviously talking about the villagers at this point. And then he goes and starts this incredible rant and this incredible monologue about making the world grovel at my feet. And he starts to talk about the murders he's going to commit. He says a few big people, a few small people, just to show we make no distinction. It's so funny.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
It's so funny. And he talks about obviously like the power that he can possess now that he's invisible, and he talks about armies, invisible armies. Yeah, he's just clearly gone fully wackadoo at this point. And he says, "Look, you're gonna have to join me, Kemp." He's demanding he joins him as his partner. And yeah, Kemp protests, but Jack says, "Look, go get your car because we need to go and collect the books that I've left in the village, because that's how I'm gonna get back to the way I was." So he's making Kemp an accomplice in this master plan.
Yeah, and he makes Kemp drive him back down to that inn where he sneaks back in and he goes up to his old room and he gets all his books together and he throws them downstairs. But meanwhile, again, he's back. Meanwhile, there's a big town meeting with this policeman who says that it's all a hoax. And the guy is like, he stole my hat off my head and put it on the floor. It's like, bro, he's about to do way worse than that. But yeah, on his way out, the Invisible Man just can't help it, but make this police chief know that he is real, because when he goes to sign off this paper, basically to confirm that it is just a big hoax and they're all crazy, because he keeps coming up with excuses as to each of their stories, as to like their pranks that happened to them. The Invisible Man just slightly moves his inkwell whenever he's about to use it, and then he moves it again, and then he throws it in his face. Una O'Connor's in this scene.
Really? And what did she do?
She screams as loud as she can.
Who saw that coming?
Yes, James Whale, probably.
Yeah, probably.
Probably cheered her on.
So yeah, Jack is obviously gone fully wackadoo, and he's just kill the head of police. And then we we cut back to Jack with Kemp, and he's another very funny scene, I have to say. He's talking about the
Yeah.
levels of servitude that he's going to require, including bringing him meals. He just needs them to be at his beck and call 24/7. He's clearly just turning. Basically, he wants his own personal Renfield. He obviously doesn't know who Renfield
Yeah.
is, but you get what I'm trying to say
Literally.
here. And then we cut back to the policeman whose body is being removed from the inn, and a group of detectives, obviously wanting some vengeance for their mate. They start to try and hatch a plan to find this invisible man. And then we see a few great screen wipes as they reveal their plan to catch him. So the screen
Yeah.
just starts wiping.
You really made the film feel big, I feel.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's really like it gives the film a different energy. I think at this point that really needed. Not say it was slow, but it just injects another, just in case there was any
Yeah.
danger of it lagging. It just boom, like
It felt like it was just like all set in a small town, and now we've expanded. Now like the radio announcements going out,
an adrenaline
and there's
rush,
children finding out. There's people in fields finding out. There's people who are at work finding out. Like everybody is now finding out that this actually is a pretty big deal, and the Invisible Man is at large.
Yeah, yeah. That's so good. Yeah, brilliant montage, like I said then, of the locals listening to radio appeals for help, to volunteer in finding this invisible man. They all start to look really terrified. They start to like batten down the hatches and trying to go for safety. And then other people then are deciding that they're going to join this search, join this crusade, this manhunt. So yeah, obviously people, as you would, several people reacting differently, shall we say. And then we cut back to Kemp, who's trying to call Dr. Cranley, tells Kemp to keep Jack quiet, and I'll come in the morning because, yeah, we can't kind of let this thing get out of our control. We need to keep it within our control because we can still kind of get Jack back on board. And then Flora says to her father, she's asking her father, why is he doing this, or what's the story, kind of thing. And he says, look, he's the Invisible Man. So I think it's the first time Flora's properly come to grasp at this point, and obviously, she's pretty, as it would be, she's pretty devastated to find this out.
Yeah, so she joins Cranley then, and they go to the house, and they basically, at least with Flora, but I think with Cranley as well, the main aim is to just try and talk Griffin down from the ledge, so to speak. Like they're just gonna try and somewhat humanize him again, because they're aware that like the Jack that they know would never behave like this, and it's obviously a result of these chemicals he was experimenting with, that it's warped him in some way. So Flora tries her best to chat to him, but again, we just get this fucking killer monologue from Claude Rains,
So good.
where he says that even the moon fears him.
Yeah.
What a line! That line is insane. Even the moon fears me. What a line.
It's also brilliant because you can really feel like sometimes these kind of, as we said before on the podcast, sometimes these romance angles can feel a bit just thrown in there because that's what you did at the time. You can actually, again, Claude Rains sells this thing so well that you can really feel like he does really, really, really care about Flora, but obviously he's just way too far gone to like be able to do anything about it. He's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, because again, he's talking about whichever country can buy his secret will become the most powerful country in the world, because he'll make them an invisible army and he'll be the ruler of the world. Pretty much everybody will bow down to his feet because he has unlimited power. Fun fact as well, actually, just with his performance, I just thought I'd say it now because it's probably one of these scenes, but Mark Hamill actually said that his voice acting as the Joker was inspired by Claude Rains as the Invisible Man, the way he delivers his monologues and stuff. So I just thought that was pretty cool. Actually, as well, did you read that story about when Claude Rains took his daughter to see the film? And there was minus temperatures outside. So he was wrapped up in a hat and scarf.
He was talking to her about every scene, like this is what we did there, and like instead of watching the film, everyone else that was in the theater was just like just listening into his stories.
When they were going in, because it was so cold and he had the scarf and the hat and the glasses, when he went to buy the ticket, the woman at the ticket booth lost her shit and was like, "Oh my god, are you Claude Rains?" And he was like, "Yeah." And she tried to let him in for free, and he was like, "I'm paying for a ticket. Like I'm good for." He was like, "I'm good for the money," and she was like, "No, like seriously, go in for free." And he was like, "I just want to see the movie." So he ended up paying. For anyone wondering, he did end up paying.
What a good guy. Nah, God, he's a legend. God, I just can't get enough of him. He's so good. So yeah, we cut back then to Kemp, and it turns out that Kemp has called the police on the sly.
Yeah, Griffin makes a promise to Kemp, as you do. He makes a promise to his former best friend that he will kill him at 10 o'clock the following night. He's at 10 p.m. tomorrow night, you will be dead. Mark my words, that is a promise.
And he vows to
It's so great.
he vows to defeat the police. Like, he's already talking in like militaristic language. Like, it's not
Yeah,
about
yeah.
escaping, it's about defeating an opponent. Like, oh,
Yeah.
it's just so layered. It's so good. Yeah, Claude Rains is a G. He's so good.
He's the best. And he goes outside, and in one of the few times where they've attempted this technique, the police have all linked arms to try and kind of comb the area. My one thing I'll say is surely the Invisible Man would just crawl underneath them. But yeah, he I'm pretty sure does that, because then all of a sudden he's behind them and he picks one guy up from his legs from underneath him and starts swinging him around. And it's just so funny how incompetent Wells sometimes makes the police look, because there's like a dramatic pause, and then someone goes, "Oh, it must be the Invisible Man," like as his co-worker is just getting swung around by his ankles, and then Claude Rains rips your man's trousers off and he flies through the air in his boxers, again pre-code, and then just again absolutely hilarious. We just see this one woman hysterically running up the street, fearing for her life, and then a pair of trousers singing to himself is just skipping along behind her. It's amazing. The Invisible Man is class, in case you can't tell already. It's such a class film.
It's so good. Yeah, we cut back to Dr. Kemp then, who's demanding protection from the police. And again, just another great moment from where, like, Kemp hasn't done anything to like make it dislike him, really. I mean, apart from trying to
There's just something about him.
there's just it's like a sleaziness. So it's like, apart from obviously trying to get with his best mate's missus, leaving that aside.
But
that's
the other
great.
thing then as well is this scene, because Cranley's whole thing is, we're not going to tell the police about Jack, because like if anyone's able to like alter the chemicals or whatever, or to come up with a formula, it's me and you. And he's like, he starts getting interrogated by the police, and he's like, I don't know who the Invisible Man is. And they're like, but then how did you know to come to this house that he was in? Like, how, like, surely you know who he is. And then, Kemp just goes, it's Jack.
Because it's Griffin.
So he rats him out. And from there, it's kind of like, all right, now I kind of do want to see you get your comeuppance.
Yeah, like
it's not even necessarily comeuppance, because he's like literally fearing for his life.
Yeah,
but,
like he's not doing anything
something
that
about him
you wouldn't do, but there is just like a sleaziness, or like an untrustworthiness about him. Like, you find yourself rooting for literally an absolute, like, literal murderer over him. It's weird. So yeah, then we get this amazing, absolutely incredible looking train collapse sequence, where basically Jack attacks a train.
Sorry, just before that, because I think it's interesting, because it is how he like said it in his speech. So first he kills some small people. He kills he throws two fellas who were in a search party just off a cliff.
Yeah.
And then he goes for the big one. The train scene.
Oh, it's so good. It looks so realistic. It looks so kind of what it is. It's horrific. Like, you've however many people was on that train, they're obviously all dead now.
100.
Like, was it 100? Yeah, I didn't catch that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So there was a report after.
Okay,
so there was he killed 100 people in the train crash and 20 people who were searching for him. So his body count was, including the policeman, was 121 at this point, I think.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. So yeah, then he's going on his kind of reign of terror yet again, and he attacks the train. He enters a bank and he starts to steal money and throw it away, almost like a Robin Hood like figure at this point. That's not what he's going for
because
at all,
and as well, he obviously in the future would then play Robin Hood's enemy in The Adventures of Robin Hood as well, which is another class Claude Rains performance, because he's got a stupid long ginger wig, and it looks so inappropriate on his head. It just looks so bad, but like that's such a good film as well, actually. But he's brilliant in that as well. If you haven't seen The Adventures of Robin Hood, it is so good. It's one of the best early examples of a film like using color to make a film just look class. Like that and Wizard of Oz, like the two of them for me are like the epitome of when film went to color and used it properly.
I'll check that
Claude
out.
Rains is a man. He's the
Anything,
man.
anything with Claude Rains, and I'm in, to be honest with you. So we cut back to a bunch of reporters who are trying to get the inside info on Griffin. And by the way, one of these reporters played by
Dwight Fry. He's back on the podcast.
It's weird how Dwight Fry, so he's so good as Renfield in Dracula, and then he has a lesser role in Frankenstein as Fritz.
Yeah.
And then by this film, it's like he just has a little tiny cameo. It's weird how,
Yeah.
as good as he was as Renfield, it's weird that his exposure.
Because he was so good as Renfield, yeah. Now, he does have some good lines in Bride of Frankenstein, in fairness, so.
Yeah.
But he's literally a cameo in this film, and his whole role is basically suggesting ways of catching the Invisible Man to the police. He's a reporter. So why don't you just put like hot tar on the roads? And they're like, because he wouldn't walk on them.
Yeah, the policeman hints that they do have one method of finding him, so they kind of leave that dangling there. We don't really know what that is at the moment. And then we cut back obviously to Cranley comforting his daughter Flora. So then we figure out at this point what the plan is, and they start to drag a net across a room to make sure
one of my favorite details in the film.
It's really
the first time I saw it, that just made me go, yes. That was
fair,
the moment for me where I was like, this is perfect.
Probably the one moment where they actually come across as competent. Well, the first moment that they come across as competent, where it's like, that's actually very clever. So once they know that Jack isn't there because they've brought this net across the room, they stay. What the plan is they're going to use Dr. Kemp as bait, since they know. Which, by the way, you can understand Kemp's like, what the fuck are you doing here?
He was like, what are you going to do? Using his live bait? And the guy just goes, well, yeah.
That is, I mean, it makes sense, but it's also like, what film? Honestly, it's so crazy. Yeah. It's so whack. Yeah, the plan is to use Kemp as bait, and once they try to let Griffin then kidnap him, they'll obviously know his whereabouts, and they're going to seize him then. So yeah, Kemp protests, and then they're like, all right, fair enough, we're going to disguise as a policeman instead. But I don't know how that, like, surely that would make the plan less likely to come off.
So the plan is, and it also didn't it didn't really work in my head either. But so the plan is that they're going to cover all the walls around the prison in loose dirt, so that once you see the dirt falling, you'll know he's there. And then there's a load of policemen who are armed with spray paint. And if you see the dirt falling, just start spray painting, basically, because it means the Invisible Man's crawling over, or, a gust of wind. Meanwhile, at like 10 o'clock or just before 10 o'clock, they are going to try and get him out of the police station to try and get him safe. But that's not what happens at all. The plan backfires massively when a cat just starts walking on the wall. Such a great, like, normal way of this plan failing and just showing how stupid they are. Because the cat walks along the dirt, and again, the guy who's got his back to the wall, which makes it even funnier. He's not even doing his guard duty properly. He's not even looking at the wall. Turns around, just starts spraying like crazy, and sprays this white cat completely black. Meanwhile, they've managed to get Kemp into the back of a car dressed as a policeman, and they get him as far away as they can to his own car, where he gets changed back into... Oh, no, sorry, he stays in his clothes, but he gets into his own car then, and he's like, right, I'm heading for the mountains. I'm getting as far away from here as possible. We go back to the police station, and we see that they've just realised that they've absolutely made a balls of this, and then we go back to the car that Kemp is driving. Guess who's in the backseat of the car? It's not Una O'Connor.
It's Jack motherfucking Griffin.
It's Jack Griffin. And he's so great. He's like, some plan, dickhead. he just starts berating him and calling him an idiot, basically. And then, he starts choking him from behind. And it's like precisely 10 o'clock as well, which is gas. Because for some reason, they let him out of the police station at 10 to 10. Which, for me, I was like, surely you keep him there till 10. And then you move him to make it harder for the Invisible Man to catch him. But he just like has him in a chokehold, and he's like, so I actually followed you. I was in the police station, heard every conversation you had. I got in the back of the car with you. I hung onto the back of the car, listened to every single one of your conversations, got into this car. Some plan, mate. Well done. Just calling him an absolute fool. And then, he puts him in the car, locks it, and shoves it down off a cliff.
He ties his hands and feet together so he can't obviously get out. And then he drives the car down a hill and gets out, and then obviously the car then plummets to his death. So yeah,
Big explosion.
Kemp's dead. Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
he
we cut
dies in a
back to the.
fiery wreckage.
Am I allowed to say it's kind of what he deserved? Maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he kind of had it coming. I just didn't like his face.
Yeah, some of
It's
them.
like Vince McMahon and Christian. Vince McMahon and Christian. Just put a blue dot over his face.
So we cut back to the policeman then, who are speculating about how to catch Jack because they know they fucked up on their previous effort, and obviously lack of sleep, they're struggling to focus at this point. As is Jack, because he goes to look for some sleep in a barn, and then he manages to kind of get some kip, but then a farmer comes in who owns the barn, and he hears a snore. Obviously, he can't see where it's coming from. So good for him. He puts two and two together, and he realizes, fuck, that's the invisible man. So he goes out, goes to the police station, and he says, "Look, the invisible man's asleep in my barn at the moment. Blah blah blah. You need to go and get him."
And this man wants revenge because he made his hat dirty.
What a guy!
Yeah. One thing James Whale does so well is like he just keeps having these random recurring characters throughout the film, and they're all like just insane people. Like everybody in this film's crazy.
To be fair, I didn't actually put it together that was the same guy.
Yeah, no, it's the same guy. So he had his hat stolen, and then he's the guy who's telling the policeman his hat was stolen when the policeman gets killed, and then he's the guy who finds him in his barn. So he finally gets his revenge on the Invisible Man.
Good for him. Good for him. So yeah, the police then they start. It's, by the way, one of a couple of scenes in this film where it's snow. It's beautiful scenes where the snow is just bucketing down, and quite practical in this point because we'll come to it. But the police. The plan is to surround the barn and force Jack outside by burning the barn down. And then because it's snowing, they're going to see his footsteps come outside. So that's the plan. And then, they set the barn on fire, and it's because it's snowing heavily. They do mention, by the way, a reward of £1,000. So that's gone about, which is a fair whack of change back in the day. But yeah, obviously, once Jack realises the barn is burning down, he opens the door.
He has to spend some of that on replacing the barn, is the only thing. So, like, how much of the £1,000 is he actually getting? Like, they've just burnt his whole barn down. But here's $1,000. It's like, right, so I have to just build my barn back again with the money you've given me. Thanks.
Sorry. So yeah, once Jack realizes that the barn's on fire, he starts to run out frantically, and then once they see his footsteps, again, probably one of the only moments in the film where they do show a bit of competence.
They see the footsteps and they just open fire.
They just shoot him down and lean down, and they kind of grab, and once they can feel him, they know that that's him. Then we cut to the hospital. It turns out he's very near the end, and the doctor helping him says that the end's going to be terrible and that he asked for Flora specifically. So Jack tells Flora that he failed and he meddled in things that men should leave alone. And he dies, and it's again just a cracking shot of his face.
I genuinely would argue like the literal perfect way for this film to end.
It's incredible.
Like it's a literal perfect ending.
It's so good. Like his face just slowly and gradually reappearing, and you can finally see his face for the first time in the film.
And that's it. Then it just ends. Like
again,
the final, and as well the effect, you like see his skull before you see his head, which is so ahead of its time as well with the effects. And you just see Claude Rains lying there,
kind of peacefully in a way, like he's
soaking in that fucking incredible performance he just gave us. The end.
It's what a classic, man. It's so good.
So straight in, I gave this film 4.5 stars. The first time I watched it, I gave it 5 stars because I could forgive Una O'Connor's performance, but this time it was too much. I dropped it down to a 4.5. It is still, for me, it is still probably the best film, or at least my favorite film of the 1930s. I have it up there with The Adventures of Robin Hood, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and maybe Stagecoach. They would probably be my top ones. I don't know if I feel like I'm probably forgetting something. Let me just have a quick look. But they would be my top ones. But I think for me personally, The Invisible Man is my number one film of the 1930s. I just love everything about it other than Una O'Connor. It's so great. it's so dense with so much stuff. Like there's just so much stuff in this film.
This film is like
Like
70
there's
minutes
so
long.
much going on.
It's not even 75 minutes, and it's so packed with things. I love just the tonal, like it's such a perfect tonal balance because it is really dark and really horrific what he's doing, but it's so fucking funny at times as well. It's just so fucking funny.
Yeah, I'll throw a few more. I'll give a few more shout outs there. I love Bringing Up Baby.
Yeah.
I love Modern Times. I love It Happened One Night. Gunga Din, King Kong, Wizard of Oz. There you go. There's a few for you. You can't take it with you as well. Why not? Scarface, Little Caesar. Anyway, Bride of Frankenstein as well, of course. I'm Frankenstein. Fuck. But yeah, of all of them, I think for me, Invisible Man's number one. It's so great. You have to watch it. It's class. It's so unbelievably class. Claude Rains is so great. Incredibly underrated actor. We love him on the podcast. We'll probably cover his whole fucking filmography at this point. Any excuse to watch him, and I'm there. James Whale's an incredible director. I love his films that I've seen. Again, he gets the human element so right, yet he also manages to go absolutely batshit crazy. It's great. He balances it so well. I love the writing. I love the humor, most of it. What's all this? So just to pull back the curtain before you give your review, I was thinking really long and hard, and I think at the end of the year or maybe at the start of next year, we should do a bonus awards episode with categories. And if we're going to do a category for best minor character, so not like supporting actor, like just minor character, one of my nominees will have to be, hey, what's all this? I just love that guy so much. His big stupid mustache. He's so great. He's such an amazing character. And yeah, Invisible Man is just class. It's so fucking class. It's the only way I can describe it. I just love it. I absolutely love it. What do you make of it?
It's class, yeah. I loved it the first time I saw it. I loved it the second time I saw it. Like, it didn't go down in my estimation at all. In fact, it probably went up. I gave it 4 stars, and to be honest, like, I don't know why I should have given it 4.5. To be honest, I probably will change my Letterboxd rating for that because it's so good. I just love it so much. Claude Rains is the man. Like, I don't think there's an actor who would have done a better job with this role. He just, like I said earlier, he chews the scenery. It's just so charismatic, so funny, so dark. It's so good. Everything. The special effects are incredible. The sets are really good. This is everything about this film. I love it so much. Yeah, it's The Invisible Man. You should watch it. Like, just go watch it.
Yeah, it's class. And yeah, we're pretty grand for time. Shane, besides Dexter, have you watched any films recently?
Yeah, I saw The Lady Killers last night, which I know you've seen.
Oh, I fucking love that movie.
Yeah, so Alexander McKendrick, who we've covered on the podcast before with Sweet Smell of Success. Yeah, he directed it, and it's like an Ealing comedy from Great Britain, from the 50s. Yeah, really funny stuff. Alec Guinness in there. Basically, a group of 5 idiots who plan this big master heist, and they go and stay in this old woman's kind of house, and she thinks they're there because they're trying to practice because they're classical musicians. Little does she know that she's being roped into accidentally helping them pull off this master plan.
Yeah.
But it's just a comedy of errors. Like, anything that could go wrong for these lads goes wrong, even though there are actually moments where it goes right. I won't spoil anything, but a couple of cracking twists and an absolutely killer ending. I saw the ending coming, but it doesn't make it any less satisfying. It's more satisfying because the film does enough in there to make it really like feel earned. So yeah, I watched that. I finally got around to seeing The Birds, which it's a Hitchcock for whatever reason. I just had never gotten before. I think I liked it more than you did, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not big on The Birds, I'll be honest.
For some reason,
I'm not a huge fan of it.
For some reason, the last half an hour, like, kind of slows to a crawl, and it just doesn't really do anything after that. It's like, we get it here, Alfred. Come on, mate, you can go home now. Like, it could have finished 20 minutes earlier, and you still would have gotten the same thing. But like Tippi Hedren's, it was her first, obviously, breakout role. And yeah, she's really great. Like, for an acting novice, like, you wouldn't know it. She's really great. And Rod Taylor's very good in the film as well. Again, some really disturbing stuff in there. Like, some of the visual imagery, like, Hitchcock is the man of kind of those kind of disturbing images, and Yeah, he delivers in that aspect in the film.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they're the only two from when we last. I could be wrong, but no, sorry, recent a recent 2024 release, A Different Man, starring Sebastian Stan. One of
Mm-hmm.
my favorite films of the year, and to anyone who's thinking of going to see that film, go and see that film. I'm not going to say what it's about because I went in knowing very little. I think I'd only seen one trailer. I went in knowing very little, and there's so many incredible twists and turns, and I'm not going to say just go and see the film, and yeah, I don't think you'll be disappointed. One of my favorites of
Mm-hmm.
2024. So yeah, what about you?
Yeah, I'm so behind on 2024. I think last week I said I was going to watch Trap. Still haven't gotten around to it. No, so I crammed in a fair few of the Halloween sequels. Halloween 5 is not very good. Halloween 6 is terrible. Halloween H2O is great crack. Oh, sorry. Halloween 6, which I said is terrible. I'm aware. So, this might give context. I saw the theatrical cut, which is like literally an incoherent film. It makes no sense and it's just like it's ridiculously bad. But allegedly, the producer's cut is like actually quite good. I know people who've seen it, and like I was seeing people giving it like 3.5 stars and stuff, and I'm like, this film is like borderline unwatchable. It's also Paul Rudd's first ever performance, and he's
Oh really?
so bad in it. He's so bad. He plays a creepy guy next door, and he does it so bad. But again, supposedly in the producer cut, he has way more lines where he's like human, because he doesn't even feel like a human. And then again, I watched H2O, Halloween 20 years later, and that was Josh Hartnett's first ever performance. Speaking of Trap, he's class. That's a class film. Really like it. Yeah, Halloween H2O, because obviously Halloween gets slagged a lot for like the timeline goes in like literally like 6 different directions based on whatever sequel you watch. It's either like Halloween 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, which if that's the Halloween you're going off, it's like it goes into all weird cult stuff, but they don't execute it very well. And then you have the version where it's Halloween, Halloween 2, H2O, and them three as a trilogy is class, but then they make Halloween Resurrection, which is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. I also watched that this week. Yeah, it's literally one of the worst films. It's like literal cinema blasphemy. Like, it is abhorrently bad, half a star, terrible movie. The only thing that was in any way entertaining, but then they had to go and ruin it, was that Busta Rhymes is in it, and Busta Rhymes does a fucking spinning head kick not Jason Voorhees, but to Michael Myers. But then, spoiler alert, like all the other characters who just kind of get like stupidly killed off or whatever, Busta Rhymes' character for some reason is invincible and just keeps surviving everything. Obviously because he's like the biggest star in the film other than Jamie Lee Curtis, who, spoiler alert, is only in one scene. So you get robbed there as well because she was in all the posters. And it's not in like a Scream kind of way. It's just shit. Yeah, terrible movie. I saw Blair Witch Project for the first time, and I was surprised at how much I liked that, because I didn't think I would, and I thought it was actually really good. The ending is so creepy, and like I thought it was going to be hard for me to get into it, because like I knew heading into it that you actually don't really see anything. Like that's all I knew. Like supposedly you don't see anything. Bro, they still managed to create such an atmosphere with that film. But even if you see nothing, you're feeling something, your heart's pounding, because like, yeah, they create such an atmosphere. They do so much with so little. What a monster box office success as well. Um, Besides that, I saw Terrifier 2. I might see Terrifier 3 this week, but I'll see if I get time. Still need to watch all them movies for that tier list video, but yeah, that's about all I've watched at the minute. And I reckon that's probably where we're going to park that for now. Because, spoiler alert, we are literally about to just film Bride of Frankenstein now. So yeah, feel free, please, to support Shane's Invisible Man's videos. Definitely coming out. If not before this episode, then probably immediately after this episode. And then my tier list is coming once I watch those last 3 films. I think last week I was at 5 to go or 6 to go. We're down to 3. So I'll try, and I might get time to watch one tonight. I don't know. And then I'll wake up early tomorrow morning, and I'll definitely watch one tomorrow morning, and then we'll just see. But yeah, not enough hours in the day. And then we've what we're doing in November, and that's fucking exciting. But we'll talk about that in next week's episode. Right.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, we'll figure out next week, but I think it's a fun one for the month that it is.
Yeah, it's going to be great crack. I'm very excited. I've all sorts of ideas anyway for what we'll do on the Instagram, but we'll come to that when we come to it. Anyway, thank you so much for all the support, and yeah, we'll see you next week for Bride of Frankenstein, directed by James motherfucking Whale.
Man at the moment.
That guy was a legend. Thank you so much, and we'll see you then. I've been Harry Bailey.
I've been Shane Mulvaney.
And that has been the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Thank you.